Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
With Randy Corporon.
On KLZ.
This is the podcast for Wake Up with Randy Corporon. Listen to Wake Up with Randy Corporon live weekdays 5 to 7 a.m. on KLZ AM 560 The Source or through our online stream at 560thesource.com. Share this podcast with your friends and be sure to like us at Facebook at Wake Up with Randy Corporon.
On KLZ AM 560 The Source.
Good morning, everybody. It's Randy Corporon on the new Wake Up with Randy Corporon show here on 560 KLZ. 7 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you were supposed to be at work by 5, you're late. I am so happy to be here with you on the inaugural version of the brand new show. I just think it's terrific that KLZ is making this commitment to live and local talk radio. Conservative talk radio at its best. We'll be here every single day, Monday through Friday, for as long as they'll put up with me. My goal today is to get acquainted with you, find out who is listening to KLZ. I couldn't believe how many people were on the road as I drove in this morning. I've been an early riser for a long time, but usually, tucked in at home with a good book or online or doing some preparation for my law work. But I'm also here today, and it's like a mausoleum around here, except for the bright lights in the KLZ studio high atop the tower here. And I'm joined by my producer, Zach Pugh. Zach, why don't you come on and say hello?
Well, hello there. Good morning.
It's so exciting to be here. And, you and I came down here on Friday for kind of the trial run. And we were joking. We're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to do this thing. And driving down here, got here at about 4:30, went on the air, didn't go on the air, but pretended like we were on the air at 5 o'clock. And I don't know about you, but I just loved it. It doesn't bother me a bit. I think that, if you're up this early, it means you've got an awful lot going on. You may be headed home from work. You may have young kids, and you've got to get your stuff done before you get them up to start school. You may be working on your degree. You may be like me, a small business owner, someone who's learned that, Ben Franklin's old saying, early to bed, early to rise, was at least half right, because I never quite got the early to bed part down. How about you, Zach? You and I aren't used to being here this early. Were you able to go down last night early and get some sleep?
I was. I got it down a little bit before 10. So that was, my goal is 10 at the latest, but I'd like it to be a little earlier. Waking up isn't a big problem. I have a newborn, so he wakes me up throughout the night. So I've got myself equipped to handle this.
How old's your newborn?
He is 5 months old now.
And that's your second kid, isn't it?
That's the second.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you come to KLZ? What you've been here, you were here before I got here, or started, well, maybe not. I actually filled in on Grassroots Radio Colorado for a couple of years now, I think, off and on. And how long have you been here?
Almost 2 years.
Well, I really appreciate your commitment to come down and help us try and kick this thing off. It's an honor to be sitting in the chair and starting off the new live and local morning show here on 560 KLZ. We're going to have an awful lot to talk about. There is just so much going on in the world. And in fact, there's a major deadline today that everybody should be aware of if you want to participate in our election process. Today is the last day to affiliate with a major party in order to vote in the March 4th party precinct caucuses. So what that means is, if you are a libertarian, if you've been fed up with the Republican Party and so you changed your declaration to independent, if you're thinking about getting active in politics but you haven't been for a long time, but you realize we've got to get busy, we've got to jump in, we've got to get things done, today is the last day to register as a Republican or a Democrat if you want to participate in caucus. And in the years that I've been involved in politics now, and I still consider myself kind of a newbie, maybe 4 or 5 years of real activism. I know when I've been in here with Ken Clark on Grassroots Radio, he talks about the decades of active work in the Republican Party that he's gone through. And it really makes a difference. You learn so much. But I've been very, very busy, and one thing I know for certain, what happens locally is what makes the biggest difference. I mean, just think about it. The liberty movement in Colorado for the last year, 2013, just had success after success after success. We had 3 recall elections, recalled 3 Democrats who voted gun laws and tax bills and all kinds of freedom-grabbing, constitutional rights-limiting legislation. And by the way, if you disagree with that, if you're driving into work and you're going, wait a minute, I liked those Democrat laws. I thought that sane gun regulations were a good idea, and I thought that those were sane. Give me a call. Let's talk about it. 303-477-5600, because I want to know what you're interested in, what's on your mind. My goal for this show is to become the show in the morning. If you're up this early and you want to know what's going on, that this is the first place you stop in. I want you to be thinking about the things that we talk about on the morning show from 5 to 7 here on 560 KLZ. And I want you to be a part. And in fact, we've already got a call. Maureen, welcome to the AM 560 KLZ morning show. I'm Randy Corporon. What is on your mind?
Randy, I just want to tell you how very, very thrilled I am that you have stretched yourself and stretched your schedule to start this program, and I prayed for your safety on the road this morning. I'll be praying for you in the days to come as you conduct your program. I have been a political activist for many decades and gave up a career that I loved in order to teach the U.S. Constitution. I wrote a course on it, and when I listened to Dr. Kranowiter, I realized I hardly knew anything, but it was a start. And I wrote a course on the Constitution and taught it to adults first, starting with 8 people in a home, ending up with audiences of maybe 500 or 600, and went on to teach in a private school, etc. And I got so discouraged with the Republican Party and the lack of anything going on here that I just kind of got out of circulation, so to say, for a long time. But I do congratulate you on your show. I do know that you'll have a lot of success in speaking to the people of this area. And I'm going to mention you to a national audience where I call in on another radio station, and so that the people that listen to that station will know of you and KLZ's wonderful, wonderful work in the area of the liberty movement. And so I just, I'll get off now so other people can call, but I will be calling in from time to time, I expect, and I certainly, as I say, I thank you very much for including this in your busy schedule and all the other things that you do for liberty.
Well, Maureen, those are very kind words, and I'm so grateful to have the very first caller here on 560, AM 560 KLZ, that tells me that at least we have, we have 5 listeners for sure. Zach, we've got you, we've got me, we've got my beautiful wife, Tana, who I know is up and listening this morning, and my dear, loving mom woke up at 5 a.m. this morning to catch the premiere of the show. So it's good that we've got some folks with us. Maureen, that was a great story. To be disheartened and come back in, it is so important for us to get active. I'll tell you more about the rest of the show when we come back on the other side. Thank you for being with us on the inaugural version of Wake Up with Randy Corporon on AM 560 KLZ. I'm Randy Corporon. It's the KLZ 560 Morning Show. We are awfully glad you're here. Join us in studio at 303-477-5600. Let me know what you're up to this early in the morning. Talk to me about what you want to hear on the new morning show here on KLZ 560. On Mondays, we will typically have a visit from former Colorado State Senator Sean Mitchell. And he's unable to start his, what I expect to be a regular visit as we go forward. This particular Monday, we may hear from him a little bit later in the week, but if you haven't been keeping track of former Senator Sean Mitchell, an attorney like myself, he is now writing a column for townhall.com finance, and it is killer. If you are not on Facebook, you should be reading what Sean is writing on Facebook. He is a passionate, active, conservative voice of reason and a firm believer in salvaging our country by hanging on and restoring constitutionally limited government. And that's what I'm all about here as well. My history is a weird one, probably. It's not your typical, certainly not your typical lawyer history, I would think. I grew up here in Denver, and we moved around as a kid. We moved to Ohio for a year, then back to Colorado, then we wound up in Chicago, in the Chicago area. And as I got a little bit older, I got a little rowdy and actually dropped out of high school at 15. Never went back. Left home just after my 17th birthday in Chicago to come back here to Denver and pursue my very first passion, which is automobiles. I'm a car freak. I love old cars and hot rods and exotic cars, motorcycles, anything that goes fast, sounds fast, looks cool. Love to fix them. Came back here, learned my trade at the Denver Automotive and Diesel College, and then opened up auto repair businesses in town. So I've kind of worked my way through a whole lot of different directions and careers and things like that. I'm now a law partner at The Law Center in Highlands Ranch, where you may have heard of us because we've been actively involved in the senior and founding partner of the firm, Robert Wareham, testified a great deal at the gun hearings last year as the Democrats were shoving through all this horrific gun legislation. We've had a couple of instances in the last few months where we at the Law Center just jumped into action. Retired, I think he was a Marine. Anyway, he was a retired military guy, was just living his life in his apartment. All of a sudden got a letter that said, if you don't get rid of your guns, you have to leave your home. And we found out about that. That letter stayed in force less than 24 hours. Just a few weeks ago, we had a friend who was not attacked, but was threatened by a dog in the apartment or the condominium complex where he lives. A dog that had been out and loose and off the leash before and was aggressive toward him. He legally carries his firearm. And when this dog confronted him, no owner in sight, he unsheathed his gun and held it, up in the air, just got it ready, backed up to a stairwell. The owner of the dog came out, and I don't mind talking about this because he's been on Grassroots Radio Colorado talking about it, and we may not be done with this story, but let me finish it up. He backed up to his stairs. The owner of the dog came out, called the dog in, saw him standing there with his gun, pointed up in the air, called the police. Guy goes into his apartment, and 45 minutes later, he gets the bang on the door. The SWAT team is there. And this guy, I'm not actually getting choked up. It's just emotional for me to think of somebody who served their country getting treated like this by the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department. They dragged him out. They didn't drag him out. They had him come out. They put him through all the perp stuff, arrested him, took him to jail, charged him with felony menacing for legally carrying a weapon and but getting it at the ready to defend himself when there's an animal loose who's being aggressive. And so we got the police reports and looked at it, quickly. We rallied the troops. A close friend of Grassroots Radio Colorado and someone that I expect we'll have on the new morning show here on KLZ 560 regularly, came down and posted his bail. And by the time I went to pick him up at 7 o'clock, we'd been in action all day long, talking to the district attorney's office, reading the reports, seeing that the only thing that this woman said happened was exactly what I just said to you. And the only statement that she made to the police that could have possibly had them charge him with felony menacing was, of course I was scared. He had a gun. So the man goes to jail. He's in jail for less than 24 hours. We get into action with the district attorney's office, and to their great credit, by the time I went to pick him up, he actually stayed in jail a little bit longer than he would have because his bail was getting posted, the paperwork was being processed, But before they released him, they got a new order from the judge. Very next day, it was picked up Thursday night. Very next day on Friday, got an order from the judge that said, this man is to be released. This case is being closed with no charges filed. So they had to sit him back down, do new paperwork to let him out. But in any event, he was out that night. And the story is still a little convoluted in that he went back to get his weapons. They had seized a couple of guns, spent some time in his apartment, took ammunition as well. And it turns out, and this is interesting, I'd love to hear what you think about this policy, and we've got callers. We'll go to them in just a second. But I'd love to hear what you think about this policy. The Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department, if they take your legal guns, and you're exonerated or not charged, or for whatever reason, you're entitled to get your guns back. When you go down to the Sheriff's Department, you can't get your gun. Listen to this, Zach. You can't get your guns and your ammunition on the same day. So you have to go in and get your firearm, leave, and come back the next day to get your ammunition. Now, to me, that makes about as much sense as putting the sign up that says gun-free zone and expecting that nobody's going to break into your house now that you've announced that you have no way to defend yourself. It's absolutely insane, and we're gonna see what we can do about some of these policies, and we'll certainly keep you posted here on the 560 KLZ Morning Show. We've got a caller on the line, Timothy. Thank you for checking in. Welcome to the new morning show here on KLZ 560.
Well, good morning. Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. What's going on?
I just getting ready for work, and I always listen to the radio, and I'm excited that you're on. I listen to you frequently on Grassroots Radio on the way back from work, and I'm excited that you're here. I hope you're going to do, I don't know your format yet. This is my first day hearing you, and I'm hoping that you give bits of news and things like that. I appreciate the news, especially little snippets of news that are concise, and I really appreciate the local stuff a lot, and I know you're involved with the Tea Party, and I'd like to ask you, is there a Tea Party component in the Broomfield area?
You know, the only new, there's the Broomfield 912. Ken Clark is the vice chair, I think, of that. He'd probably be the chairman, except he's so busy with all of his other activism in Grassroots Radio Colorado. But Broomfield 912 comes to mind. There's a brand new Tea Party group in South Jefferson County Tea Party, that's going to have their first meeting this Thursday at 6:30. And Dr. Jill Vecchio, who regular listeners of KLZ is familiar with, she co-hosts a Sunday show. What's it called? The Heart of the Matter. Thanks, Zach. Heart of the Matter. But she's one of the great experts now in Obamacare. You know, read it several years ago, as I unfortunately did. But she has spent the last couple of years really, really hunkering down into the weeds on Obamacare, and you hear her clips throughout the day on KLZ. So she'll be the first speaker at that South Metro. Isn't it awesome, Tim, that there's that we now have kind of these bookend shows? We've got the morning show with a constitutional conservative Tea Party leader here, 5 to 7 a.m. every day, Monday through Friday on KLZ, and then Grassroots Radio, 5 to 7 in the p.m. For people who are going home. I just think it's going to make a great mix, and we'll be hearing from Ken Clark at 6:45. Probably make that kind of a regular feature, have him call in and let us know what's going on with Grassroots, what he's up to, because talk about an activist. Ken's my hero in that regard, and so I'm kind of glad to be part of the team here.
That's really great. Well, I've got to tell you that I compliment you both. Again, my shift is such that I work 10 hours, so I hear you guys in the morning. Well, not in the morning till now. And on the way home, I listen to you guys and enjoy that. You know, stuck in traffic is no problem because you guys are there. And I like that. And I just want to tell you that I'm a retired veteran, 22 years, 4 deployments, and I appreciate having my gun permit, and I'm an avid bow hunter as well as a rifle hunter, and nothing bothers me more than people wanting to take from us the way they want to. And so thank you for sharing those stories of a man who actually was served an injustice, and then you came to his behalf, and like you said, everybody rallied, and I think that's great, and thank you for that. I appreciate your effort helping the little guys.
Well, Tim, I really appreciate that, and it was funny what you said about the format of the show. You don't know what the format's going to be. Well, Heck, neither do we. I mean, this is kind of it's the first time for me doing something like this, and Zach's a young guy and new producer here, and we're just going to work this out as we grow it, and as we hear from people like you. As a veteran and a hunter and a gun owner, I've got a question for you, but I'm up against a break. Can you stick around for just a second, Tim?
Well, I'd be glad to.
All right, we'll be right back on the new morning show, Wake Up with Randy Corporon on KLZ 560. So clearly you get my 70s roots here when it comes to music. I do have a little bit of prior radio experience. I was a FM music disc jockey back in the, early 80s, I guess. Did a Sunday morning oldies show on here in it wasn't in the Denver area, but in Colorado. And then did the mushy FM music stuff during the day or the evenings. I started out doing overnights, midnight to 6. That was a shift. I'd ride my motorcycle to Windsor, Colorado every night before midnight, drive home at 6. That was something else. Welcome back. You are at with the inaugural version of the new KLZ morning show, Wake Up with Randy Corporon. I'm awfully glad you're here. Our studio line is 477-5600. When we went to break, Timothy was still on the line with us, and Timothy, as a veteran, as a hunter, as someone who owns weapons and exercises your Second Amendment rights, I want to get your take on this. As I was thinking about the show, doing this for the first time, you're always thinking, gosh, what am I going to talk about? How can I make it interesting? And then actually what turns out happening is you have to decide, what am I not going to talk about? Because there's so much to do. But when I heard your call, it reminded me of a letter that I read in the Sunday Post yesterday. And I just want to tell you, I don't have a monthly subscription to the Denver Post. I really don't like to support it. But I do get a lot of entertainment value out of it, and I like the Sudoku puzzles. But the Sunday letters are great, and here's a letter writer, Dave Hertick, who wrote this letter to the editor that says, "What ended shooting?" And it was in response to a letter regarding the Arapahoe High School shooting. Letter writer Ann Culver writes, "Grow up, gun rights folks. Your way is clearly not working." And this writer says, maybe it's time to more carefully consider whose way is not working. What stopped the horrible murder at Arapahoe High School from becoming a mass murder situation? Was it the gun-free zone? Was it the magazine limits? Was it the background check? Was it the new fee for the checks? Or was it the armed response closing in on the shooter? Now tell me again, whose way is not working? Isn't that what this debate really boils down to, Timothy?
Oh, I'm no expert in that. I do have some opinions. However, I would say that you're right. I think you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on. It's said that if you take an armed handgun, even have it cocked at the ready, set it on a tree stump, it won't kill anybody for 100 years. It won't do anything unless someone comes up and uses the weapon unwisely. So, a weapon in of itself is a tool. That's all. And so when people wield it inappropriately, they do it with purpose. And as a hunter, I know I use that weapon to get an elk or use my bow and arrow. That's a primitive weapon that's very effective. And, I don't take that right. I'm not cavalier about that. I take it very seriously. So the handgun or the weapons are clearly not to blame. And I think what you said, the last part, is with people with weapons closing down on someone who's in that situation of taking the life of an innocent person, I think that's when they say, I have no way out of here, and they turn the weapon on themselves, and they know that they've done the best they could to create terror in the community. And the results are evident. Terror works, and people want to shut down people like us with weapons, and I think it's a sad affair.
Well, every time there's a shooting, the gun rights folks just go absolutely nuts and try and find new ways to limit this and control that. And it's just like I said before, it's as stupid as thinking that by putting a sign on the front door that says gun-free zone, you've now made yourself safer, because the criminal looking to come in is going to say, oh, wait a minute, I can't take my gun in there. These school shootings could be much less destructive, much less deadly if there was an armed, trained person on campus. And in fact, it's like the Aurora movie theater shooting. That guy targeted movie theaters where people couldn't carry their guns. And
Absolutely.
Of course, that's where they're going to go. Well, Timothy, I'm so glad to have had you on the inaugural version of Wake Up with Randy Corporon here on KLZ 560. I hope you'll call in often, and we will definitely be talking about working in the news. We're going to do a lot of local and national stuff. We'll have national guests. This Wednesday, we're going to have Justin Everett on the show. He's probably, in my mind, the Colorado Legislator of the Year. He won the Goldwater Award. He's somebody who actually reads the bills to see what's in them before he decides whether he's going to vote on them. And he's going to join us Wednesday morning at 6:30. This Wednesday is the first day of the Colorado Legislature session. So he's going to tell us what we have in store and what we can do to try and keep our eye on those folks. Keep your hands on your wallet is all I can say. Timothy, I hope you'll come back and see us again. Thank you very much. At 6 o'clock, we will be joined in studio by Mark Zarlango. Now, that's a name that you may not be too familiar with, although certainly some of the listeners to Grassroots Radio who may be tuning in this morning, and by the way, I keep getting all kinds of Facebook messages and different things saying, hey, it's not just you and your mom and your wife and your producer and Timothy and Maureen. What was the first gal's name? Zach? Was it Maureen? Okay. I'm here too. We've got Christina's driving up to Grand Junction and sent me a message. Keep your eyes on the road, Christina. You'd know Christina. She's been in studio before on Grassroots Radio Colorado. But it's really great to know that you are all out there, and I hope that you'll continue to call and just let me know not only what's on your mind, but you're listening, you're on your way to work, you're doing this, you're doing that. What can we do to make this the show that you're going to tune into every morning? Because I know there's competition out there, and I know what I've gotten tired of in some of the talk radio. I'm a talk radio fan. I love talk radio. I think talk radio is the thing it's the great equalizer for the conservative movement, the liberty movement, because it gives us the opportunity to grow and learn and connect with like-minded people, find out about events that are happening, find out about bills and issues that we need to be addressing. Something else we'll be doing here on the show is part of my Tea Party leadership. I'm the chairman of the Arapaho Tea Party, and I also affiliate myself and participate in leadership calls and webinars and things like that with Tea Party Patriots. And Tea Party Patriots is growing by leaps and bounds, 1.2 million likes on Facebook now. This is a national organization that started in the kitchen of one of the founders, Jenny Beth Martin. I've spent time with Jenny Beth. I've been on stage with her. I've spoken with her. She's someone who has devoted her life to helping us wrest control from the big business, the big power, the established power base in Washington, D.C. Because if we've learned one thing as constitutional conservatives, if we've learned one thing as people who have awakened that patriotic voice, that patriotic heart that I think so many Americans are born with, and we got complacent about until things started to get so bad. She is someone who is committed to the cause, and Tea Party Patriots is putting together action plans, phone numbers, schedules of things that need to happen. We'll be, as we try and get the show together, as it gets easier because we're getting used to, putting a show together and figuring out how to categorize things, how to prioritize things, how to get information to you that's important. We will definitely make sure that this show is a resource that can guide you when you're thinking, gosh, what should I do next? There is so much going on. An email from Wilma that says we're sounding great so far. Wilma, I hope you get to feeling better and get home soon. Thank you so much for the work that you continue to do during your recovery. Lots of emails out there. You guys are busy. I really appreciate it. Give us a call if you'd like to say hello, 303-477-5600. I started to talk about Mark Zarlango and said that if you don't know him or don't know that name yet, you will soon. He'll be joining us in studio here at 6 o'clock with some very important information. And he does this blog. It's called Ogre. Old Guard Republican Establishment. Old Guard Republican Establishment. It's kind of like Rhino, Republican in name only. And by the way, fellow liberty activists, when you spell Rhino talking about Republicans, R-H-I-N-O, I get mad at you. Stop doing that. It's RINO, Republicans in name only. And I want to talk with him about ogre. I want to talk to him about rhinos. Because the one thing I know for sure is that for Republicans, and Republicans who are been in office a long time, who've been running campaigns a long time, who've been knocking on doors or writing checks or whatever they've been doing, for many of those folks, it is a very insulting label. And my friend John Andrews, the president of the Centennial Institute, strongly suggests that we stay away from those kinds of labels and those kinds of names. And I start to get persuaded sometimes when I talk to people like John, who, as you may know, worked in the Nixon White House, was a speechwriter, actually resigned from the White House when he discovered that Richard Nixon had lied. Said he couldn't live with that anymore, came back to Colorado, got in the Colorado State Legislature, ran for governor, runs the Centennial Institute, puts on the Western Conservative Summit, does all those kinds of amazing things. That's someone who has walked the walk and talks the talk and has really devoted his life to that kind of public service. And when he talks about staying away from those labels, I get persuaded. And then John Boehner opens his mouth. Or Karl Rove jumps on and says, we're going to put $50 million into these PACs to defeat these Tea Party candidates. And it seems to me like they're the ones who are throwing down, declaring war. And how do you've got to fight fire with fire. We don't have $50 million. But I'll tell you, we don't need $50 million. Just look at what happened to Amendment 66 in the state of Colorado last year, another great liberty victory. I was on the Speaker's Bureau for Amendment 66. We had about $30,000 to compete against the millions of dollars that were thrown into our state. So don't be afraid of the numbers. Don't be afraid of the dollars that are going to be thrown at us. Be aware of them. Know that we've got to use shows like this, stations like KLZ, meetings like Arapahoe Tea Party and Broomfield 912, any and all of those things at our disposal to mobilize, get our message out. But we can win these battles. And so when Mark comes in to join us in studio, the first guest of Wake Up with Randy Corporon here on KLZ 560, we're going to talk about that. Why do the lights keep going out, Zach?
I think we're supposed to have a message from all of this already.
Is the Lord saying, wait a minute, don't go there? I don't know. Oh, you know what? It looks cool. If you haven't been here or you haven't heard us talk about it, KLZ Studio is at the top of a 12-story building, and the big glass windows face west. And with the bright lights on, I can't see a thing. But right now, the lights are off in the studio, and it is absolutely gorgeous out there. So we've got a caller on the line, Nancy. We're up against a break anyway, so I'll get to Nancy when we come back, and I'll finish telling you about Mark and the things that we're going to talk about. There's something very important happening in Colorado tomorrow. The Secretary of State is involved. The chairman of the Republican Party, Ryan Call, is involved. We'll get to that on the other side. Wake up! The KLZ 560 Morning Show. I'm Randy Corporon. So nice to have you here. If you'd like to join the show, it's 303-477-5600. Would definitely like to hear from you on the first show. What are we doing well? What do you want to hear? What will keep you coming back for more? We've got a caller on the line, Nancy. Welcome to the very first show.
Randy, congratulations. This is fabulous to hear you on the radio this morning.
Well, thank you, Aunt Nancy. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what Nancy this is, but I do appreciate the call very much. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Byers, Colorado.
Ah, yes. I think maybe I do know who this is now.
I think you do. My husband, Mick, is on his way into work, and he'll be listening to you every morning, and we wanted to congratulate you. And one thing you asked about what is going to keep people listening, and I think, Randy, you have a real talent and skill at keeping things factual, and I think we're all hungry for this. We get so much hype and spin and stuff with other things, and I think what you are going to bring to this is news that we can really use, and being a positive force, because I don't know, for me anyway, it's very easy to get frantic and thinking that, there's all these fires to put out, all these different things that are going on. But there are great victories, as you pointed out a few minutes ago. There are great victories to build on. The defeat of Amendment 66, how that went down in flames. There are lots of things like that to build on, and sometimes we just need to know what's going on in other areas so that we can network. Sometimes we just need to know the facts in time or about upcoming meetings in good time so that we can take part in them. And I think you are a voice for this conservative movement. And some people don't even like the word conservative anymore, but I do. I think it pretty well, pretty well describes the majority of people, really.
Well, when the Tea Party, of course, the very first thing after the Tea Party election successes in 2010 happened, very first thing the left did and the mainstream media did was try and trash the name of the Tea Party. And there was this outcry, oh gosh, we've been labeled, we've been lambasted, we shouldn't continue to use that name. Like heck, my goal, my mission is going to be to educate people about Tea Party values. I'm a proud Tea Party patriot, and I'm not letting go of that name for anything. And and conservative as well. The thing about conservatism is it's built on historic principles. It's built on what's happened in society, in communities, with families, over not just minutes or days or some new idea that's thought up by some big mastermind with a big degree after their name, but what has happened that's worked based on human nature, based on world history. And there's no way I'm going to let go of that term. I am proud of being a constitutional conservative. And a couple other things you said, Nancy. And by the way, good morning, Mick. If you're driving, I'm glad that you're listening. I love the familiar names that I'm getting emails and Facebook posts and calls from. Just people that I know are so active in trying to help save our state and our country. But Nancy, you said a positive voice, and that's a really good reminder for me because I do get angry sometimes. It's easy to get worked up. It's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to call people out or call people by names or call people names. I mean, just in the passion of trying to vent and feel better about something bad that's just happened. And I don't think it does us much good. I don't think that we bring people into our movement or have them get excited about or interested in the things that we believe if all they hear or see from us is anger. And so I really do hope to try and walk that fine line between, I'm not a touchy-feely kind of guy. I'm going to get angry and say what I think sometimes, and hopefully that'll make a difference. But I'm going to try not to be, bitter angry and calling names and that sort of thing. And the other thing that you said that I thought was kind of funny was talking about being factual. And I was just thinking about the blooper reels that I've already made in my fill-in appearances on Grassroots Radio. For instance, last Friday, Zach and my producer Zach and I were in here at 5 in the morning. I actually got here at 4:30 to do kind of a trial run for the show, not to go on air, but just to go through the motions. And then I was asked to fill in on Grassroots Radio that night. So I was back here in the seat at 5 o'clock after getting up at 3 o'clock that morning and clearly was sleep deprived. I was on a Mountain Dew high when I sat down here. And I was talking about Ronald Reagan being the, kind of the exemplar for the conservative movement, what it takes to elect conservative Republicans. And I made a comment of something along the lines of him being the living testament to what needs to be done for Republicans to continue to win. And, of course, what I meant was in my lifetime. He's the person in my lifetime who I can reach back to, who I saw and observed in action, who really sets the standard for how we can take back our state and our nation. But the worst thing that I said, as far as the blooper reel goes on Grassroots Radio, I thought was pretty funny, was I was talking about how George H.W. Bush ran on Ronald Reagan's coattails and said that he was going to continue the Reagan policies. And then when he had to run for re-election after breaking his promise on taxes, I said that he was soundly defeated, wiped out by Jimmy Carter, when I knew darn good and well that it was Bill Clinton that beat George H.W. Bush. But with sleep deprivation, with being in a radio studio all by yourself and talking for 10 or 15 minutes at a time sometimes, I just couldn't quite get the facts right. So I will strive to get the facts right. And I encourage listeners to this show to give me a call, send me a text or a tweet or whatever you got when you find something that wasn't so. Nancy, thanks for calling. I hope you'll check back in. Awesome. We've got often. I've got another caller. It's a kind of an odd name on there. What is it? How do you pronounce that? Is that Tana? Zach? Is that? Hi, baby.
Hi, honey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's so nice to have you up and Adam and listening. I told Zach early on that I knew I had at least 4 listeners. Zach, you, my mom, and me.
Well, I heard you say wake up, and, I always do what you say. So I kind of put the computer on your pillow next to me. I mean, it's not as attractive or as warm, but it's just like you're here.
Well, that's good. So, unfortunately, because there are at least 3 other people listening, I probably won't whisper any sweet nothings in your ear.
Oh, darn it. I'll have to just wait till tonight. But I just wanted to wish you good luck, and I love the show already.
Well, it's going to be fun, and thanks for your help, too, in finding, topics, and we went through this. You did that whole poll on the name thing, and I really love the name, Wake Up.
And I really love our Facebook friends who helped us so diligently and all the support we get. So
yeah, we had about 400 people vote on, or 400 votes on the different names, so that was a lot of fun. Well, hopefully we'll have you on regularly because you have an awesome radio voice, I have to say. Thanks for calling, honey. That's my wife, Tana, and I'll see you in an hour or so on the first hour of Wake Up with Randy Corporon here on AM 560 KLZ. As we said, Mark Zarlingo, and I don't know if I pronounced that right. Nod your head up and down. I get that right, Mark? Okay, he's in the house now. He's in there with the producer, Zach. We're going to talk about his website and his blog, Ogre. What do we do with the rhinos? How do we win elections? And this potentially horrible thing that's going on with the Secretary of State and Ryan Call tomorrow, something you need to know. We'll talk about it on the other side. Stick around for Wake Up with Randy Corporon here on KLZ 560.
Hey, it's Randy Corporon. Thanks for listening to the podcast of our show, Wake Up with Randy Corporon. Don't forget, I'm chairman of the Arapahoe County Tea Party. Our meetings are the second Tuesday of every month at 6:30 p.m. with candidates, elected officials, and topics of interest to freedom lovers everywhere. No matter where you're listening, please find us on Facebook and Google the Arapahoe Tea Party.
This is Wake Up with your host, Randy B. Corporon.
I can't help it, Zach. I've just got to let that Radar Love run a little bit. That was my all-time favorite cruising song. I introduced myself at the start of the hour, talked a little bit about my history, dropped out of high school at 15, back to Colorado at 17, auto repair businesses and stuff like that. I spent a lot of time riding motorcycles around the United States. And there was nothing like Radar Love to get you going for a long haul on a cold morning, across the desert, across the plains, whatever. So I love that song. We're going to hear that a lot on this show, I think. So nice to have you back for the second hour of Wake Up, Randy Corporon Show, KLZ 560. It just went so fast. So the callers, people on Facebook, and I'm going to look at a couple of these Facebook posts real quick. Kevin asks about where do we post comments or make comments or questions during the show. Well, that's a good idea. I need to get something set up for that. So right now, I think the place I'll keep an eye on until we get maybe a Wake Up 560 Morning Show Facebook page going is my own personal Facebook page. Just if we're not friends on Facebook, just go there, send me a request. It's Randy Corporon, RandyCorporon. And I'm also going to try and start paying attention on Twitter. I need to get better with Twitter. That is politics for the 21st century. And it's the same thing on Twitter, /Randy Corporon. So send me what do you have to do on Twitter, Zach? What's it called when you get somebody follows you?
Yeah, following.
Start following me on Twitter. I'll do the same. That's how we're going to grow our networks. I'm Randy Corporon. Welcome to the show. I'm joined in studio now by someone who's just recently become a friend, but someone with whom I think I'm going to have a very long, involved, anti-establishment Republican relationship. Mark Zarlingo is here. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Randy, very much for having me, and good morning.
Tell folks a little bit about you, who you are, what you do.
Okay, sure. I'm a Denver, Colorado native. I was born here. I grew up here. I went to school here. I love Colorado. I am an attorney by trade. Like you, I lived in the Chicago area for about 7 years. Went to law school out there, practiced out there for a few years. And it was out there I started to get involved in Republican politics. I've been a Republican my whole life. I registered as a Republican from the day I turned 18. But it was about when I lived out in Chicago, I started to actually get involved in the political process. And when we decided to move back to Denver in about 2008, I continued to do that. I volunteered, I should say, with the Douglas County Republicans. I was a district captain there. And I currently serve as a bonus member on the state Republican Central Committee. So I continue to stay involved in politics, but that's my general background.
That's going to be interesting to talk about, given the website and the blog posting you're doing, your role as an officer in the party. But since we both have this Chicago connection, what part of Chicago did you live in?
I went to school at Northern Illinois, which is in DeKalb, Illinois, which is west of Chicago. And then I lived in the southwest suburbs of Chicago.
Which one?
Orland Park.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that one. We lived in Arlington Heights, but I spent a lot of time in Chicago. We used to do a lot of rabble-rousing. Don't get me started on that. It's good to have you back. You and I connected back before Christmas. Maybe it was after Thanksgiving, and we wound up having a breakfast and just talking some politics. And I knew right away that we were birds of a feather, that we see the world a great deal alike. And you're doing some really amazing work holding Republicans accountable and providing information to people to help them make their decisions about who they're going to write checks for, who they're going to vote for, et cetera. So let's talk a little bit about your activity and what you've set up.
I set up a website called ogreexposed.org. OGRE stands for Old Guard Republican Establishment. The purpose of the site is to give people, particularly rank-and-file Republicans, information about their elected Republican representatives, senators, party officers, what they're doing down at the state capitol. And I also go beyond that. I also make sure to provide information about how the process works as far as how party officials are elected, how primaries, assemblies, caucuses work. And the purpose is to get people involved in the political process, particularly your rank-and-file Republican, which I used to just be one, a non-active Republican, to get them active in the process so they can change and have more influence in the political process beyond showing up at the voting booth and voting once or twice a year.
Well, you and I have that in common as well then, because I did my civic duty. I voted. There's no question about that. And I considered myself being pretty actively involved if I'd once in a while go to a phone bank, if I'd write a check to my local congressman, to some national group. And on election day, I would do different things like poll watch. The last few years, I worked in the Republican War Room on election day with Ryan Call when he was chairman of the Denver County Republicans. We'd be answering judge questions and whipping together briefs and running them off to court if there were some irregularities or whatever. It was very interesting. I thought it was great. I think it's important work. But that's not activism. Activism, what's really, really important is getting people like you just described involved at the precinct level, at the caucus level. It's how we get our people into these positions of power. If we don't infiltrate, and I say that in a very positive way, if we don't step in and take over these leadership positions, these ground level positions, then there's nothing we can do at the top because the leadership's not going to pay us any mind at all.
And Randy, the reality is that most people don't even know these processes exist. There's a process for how to get on a ballot. You don't just sign up somewhere and all of a sudden your name appears on the ballot and hope people vote for you. It doesn't work like that. I hear people all the time complain, what are we going to do about these Republicans? They're driving me nuts. What's our chairman doing? I don't understand it. What can I do about it? I want to quit. I can't stand these people. No, he doesn't just get there by the grace of God, so to speak. There's a process on how that happens. Most people don't understand it. One of the things I'm trying to do is educate people on this process that, quite frankly, the Republican establishment, the leadership, isn't all that keen on helping people understand. But it's very important, and it will make a difference.
Mark Zarlengo, attorney in the Highlands Ranch area, the founder of Ogre Exposed, is in studio with us on Wake Up. And you made a comment while we were waiting for the break there that wake up has a couple of different connotations. And I'm glad you picked up on that, because your comment was, it was kind of ho-hum when I first heard it. Wake up. Yeah, it's early. Whatever. But obviously there's a second connotation there. What did you pick up on that?
Right. And I said, I first heard the name and I said, oh, okay. I wasn't terribly excited by it, but I got to thinking about it a little more. And there is another connotation to it. We're not just talking about waking up in the morning. We're talking about wake up, America. Look what's going on around you. The cultural decay, the politics, the craziness going on in Washington. It's almost as a loud shot from the top of the KLZ towers to America saying, hey, look what's going on around you.
You got it. People are posting on my Facebook page. So send a request if you're not on there. Randy Corporon, I'll be watching. It looks like we've got maybe 6 or 7 people listening now, Zach. If you want to join us in studio, 303-477-5600. When we come back on the other side, we'll be talking about Ogre Exposed. And then at 6:30, we're going to talk about the hearing that Ryan Call is doing with the Secretary of State, trying to set up a independent expenditure committee. And now in the mornings on KLZ, it's Wake Up with Randy Corporon. It's so good to have you here. We've had callers, Facebook activity. I'm going to try and figure out how to follow my Twitter feed eventually. So if you've got comments or want to be involved, just start following me at Randy Corporon, RandyCorporon, or send a like to my Facebook page. And we will get you more involved in the show. Mark Zarlengo is in studio. He's an attorney in Highlands Ranch, as am I. And we do all kinds of work there, including fighting for your Second Amendment rights, your First Amendment rights, any other rights that might come along. We will stand up for you. And I'm also chairman of the Arapaho Tea Party. I want to talk about that in just a second. But so Mark Zarlengo, attorney from Highlands Ranch, founder of Ogre Exposed. You were talking a minute ago about part of what you're doing with Ogre is trying to get people the information they need to get involved at this absolute grassroots level where we can make the biggest difference. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, you just mentioned that today's the last day to affiliate with the party. Why is that important? What does that mean? Here's the thing. If you're interested in wanting to change the direction of a party, particularly perhaps the Republican Party, if you don't like the way the leadership is managing the party, if you don't like the primary candidates perhaps that show up on the ballot and you want better choices, the only way to participate in that as a Republican to have an effect is the very first step is you have to be a Republican.
I think Barack Obama would say if you like your Republican Party, you can keep it.
Yes, and I guess you can. I haven't been particularly pleased with a lot of the things that's been happening with my party, the party that I have belonged to since I was old enough to vote. And so I made a conscious effort to learn about how the process works. So step number 1, and as you mentioned, today's the last day to affiliate. If you want to have an effect on the Republican Party, you have to be a Republican first. And I know there's a lot of people who have dropped out because they're upset with the way things are going. They're disenchanted with the party, right? So what I'm hoping to try to do is make the case to those now independents, libertarians, that your best option is to become part of the Republican Party and make a difference within the party. And you will make a difference. I promise. I've done it. You can do it as well. Step 1, you have to be a Republican. Today's the last day to register as a Republican.
Well, and I've debated this with so many people. I've had this conversation with Mike Rosen on his radio show and talked to longtime activist Republicans who always come back to this party over principle thing. And I can't go there. And that's not what you're saying. You're not saying party over principle. You're saying we have to bring our principles into the party and make the party our own. And the only way to do that is to get involved at caucus, get involved at assembly, get involved in primaries, and fight like heck for the most conservative candidate that you can support to try and get him into that position to win that seat. Because by simply saying, oh, they don't have my principles, they're not doing what I believe, and proudly wearing the mantle of libertarian or independent, certainly it's your right. You do what you want. People are entitled to in this country, at least for now. But people like you and me are trying to ensure that remains the case. And I just don't think proudly wearing your principles on your sleeve, but standing outside what is clearly, and for our lifetimes, I believe, will be a two-party system, does any good at all.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. So get involved in these processes. You have to learn how they work first. And it's not hard. It really isn't hard. I know some of this stuff may go over people's heads. They may roll their eyes. They say, oh, I have too much going on. It really doesn't take a lot of time. It's not hard to understand. Going down to caucus, it's actually a lot of fun. I mean, you get to play politics with people your neighbors, literally your neighbors. I mean, that's how grassroots we're talking about here when we're talking about caucus. You literally go to a meeting with people in your neighborhood to vote on various things, including precinct people who are, therefore, they have a say in party leadership from there on out. So you are at the very base, but very important base of the party if you show up at caucus.
You're listening to KLZ 560. It's Wake Up with Randy Corporon, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get people activated, motivated, inspired, moving, and it's working. I mean, these movements are growing. We saw what the Liberty Movement did in Colorado in 2013. I think 2014 is going to be a very good year for what I consider to be the good guys and gals. You've got the website, Ogre Exposed. I know we want to spend some time, and we've still got a good chunk of the show left, to talk about these independent expenditure committee that Republican State Chairman Ryan Call is petitioning the Secretary of State to talk about. But give people your website and tell them again what they can find there.
Sure. The website address is ogreexposed.org. That's O-G-R-E exposed.org. You'll find several things there. Most prominently, you will see legislative histories of particular legislative voting records of particular Republicans. You will see information about caucus process, how to become involved in the Republican Party. You'll see information about how these rules, RNC rules, conventions, how these things affect the ability of Republicans to actually participate in the political process and the problems with that. You'll see all videos, articles, all kinds of things about what's going on with the establishment Republicans, and hopefully it'll help motivate people to get involved.
Now, you also have a Facebook page. That's a closed group, right? People can certainly ask to come in.
Absolutely.
But have you had some visitors that made you decide it needed to stay closed? I've had this experience a little bit on the Arapahoe Tea Party Facebook page as well.
Yes. Sometimes there are people that I try to stay on topic with the Facebook page. So people that tend to go off topic, it's just, you have to have you have to have a little control over it. Otherwise it's going to go, you're going to lose control of it. So
if you have a question for our guest, Mark Zarlingo, the founder of Ogre Exposed, who will be with us to talk about independent expenditure committees, and Ryan Call, the Secretary of State, on the other side, please jump on now. Wake Up with Randy Corporon on KLZ 560. Good morning. It's 6:35, 25 minutes to go until 7 o'clock. Laura Ingram will be with you then. Tomorrow at 6:30, we will be joined by what I expect to be a regular guest on Tuesdays. Somebody I've come to know and respect over the last couple of years, Christopher Doss from the Leadership Institute in Arlington, Virginia. If you're unfamiliar with the Leadership Institute, go to their website, check them out, www.leadershipinstitute.org, for things like, and you can do this online, they bring courses here that we have at Independence Institute and elsewhere, International Leadership Training School, television workshop on camera, advanced debate workshop, how to get a DC internship, online activist school with social media. I could use a little work with that myself. Christopher Doss is a constitutionalist. He's brilliant. He's very interesting, very motivating. I hope to have him as a regular guest. He'll be here on Wake Up with Randy Corporon at 6:30 tomorrow. I hope you will be too. We've got callers on the line, so we'll get to them in just a minute. Questions about the Tea Party, etc. I'm joined in studio by Mark Zarlengo. We've been talking about Ogre Exposed, and Mark, during the break, you said something very smart. You said we could practically hear the radios flipping over to FM when I talked about independent expenditure committees. But this is something that is actually potentially very frightening, and the leadership movement in Colorado should be well aware of it. Why don't you tell the listeners real quick before we go to callers what these independent expenditure committee proposals are all about?
What's happening is there's a hearing at the Secretary of State's office tomorrow, Tuesday, on a petition by the Colorado Republican Party to essentially receive approval for an independent expenditure committee that they want to set up and establish that would do a couple things. The most important thing, I think, from the party's perspective is that they believe by setting up an independent expenditure committee, they will be allowed to receive unlimited amounts of contributions, not just from individuals, but from corporations and unions as well, to spend on what are called independent expenditures. That's basically spending money to support or oppose a candidate that's not coordinated with the particular candidate. That's why it's independent, and that's why it's called an independent expenditure.
So why should we be afraid of that, or why could that become a concern for the Liberty Movement?
Well, first of all, it's a fundamental change from the way we have, Colorado anyway, has handled campaign finance issues with parties. Right now, political parties are restricted in the amount of contributions they can receive from an individual. I think it's $3,400 a year. This would essentially allow the parties, political parties, not just the Republican parties, to receive unlimited amounts of money from unlimited amounts of from unlimited sources, because right now they're also limited from receiving donations or contributions from corporations and unions.
Well, let me stop you here for just a second, because I think you and I probably agree on this. We don't believe there should be limitations on campaign financing, that's a limit on free speech. And Citizens United started to kind of pluck away at that a little bit. I am full supporter of unlimited campaign donations as long as there is full disclosure. So if people want to know who's funding candidate A or issue B or whatever, they can find that very quickly. But Ryan, call with this petition. And by the way, you have a copy of the petition up on Ogre Exposed, or on your Facebook page too, right? So if people want to go over and ask if they can join Ogre Exposed, they can take a look at it there?
Sure, they can see the petition. They can see the notice of the hearing to get information about the hearing tomorrow on Tuesday.
Yeah, we really want people to turn out for this hearing tomorrow, right? What time is it at and where is it at? Do you recall?
Yes, it's at 1:30. It will be at 1700 Broadway on the second floor in what's called the Blue Spruce Conference Room. And Randy, I want to make this point very, very clear. I totally agree with you. As a matter of principle, I am opposed to campaign finance restrictions on contributions to anyone. It's not consistent with the First Amendment. It's not consistent with the Constitution or an individual's rights to associate or freedom of speech. Having said that, the party is not attempting to overturn those restrictions with this. They're not attacking that particular aspect of it. They're not asking that the restrictions on contribution limits to the party be lifted. What they're asking for is to set up a independent, separate committee, one that the chairman of the Republican Party would actually appoint the director and the members of this committee. You can call that independent if you like, but it would allow them to receive unlimited contributions and from which they can spend whichever way they want. And I think it's important for the Liberty Movement and the grassroots movement to be aware of the issue, because there really is no saying as to how this money can be spent. Can it be spent in primaries? Can it be spent to support only favored candidates, only favored establishment candidates from people who are on this board that happen to be appointed by the state party chairman?
So here's the point. If he chose to, Ryan Call, who's going to appoint the members of this committee that will decide how to spend these unlimited resources, we've heard Washington, D.C., Chamber of Commerce, Karl Rove, even John Boehner, establishment Republicans are calling out the conservative movement. They're calling out the Tea Party. In fact, what did Mitch McConnell say? He'd like to punch us in the nose. So and I'm not saying haven't talked to Ryan Call about this yet. Maybe we'll have him on the show this week if he wants to come on and talk about it. But the possibility is that someone in the seat of chairman who can handpick the people that on this committee that decide how to spend the money can start targeting people that you and I would most likely support.
Randy, I see no potential limits within the party bylaws or within the laws that would restrict or put limits on how that money is spent. And so all we have to go on is their promise that they'll spend it wisely, that money, that potentially a lot of money, wisely to promote the principles of the Republican Party. And quite frankly, I'm not one to accept their promises. I'd like to have something a little more concrete.
You've written a whole paper about this. People can find it on ogreexposed.com. Is it .com?
.org.
.org. Okay, ogreexposed.org. We've had callers holding, and I don't mean to keep you holding so long. Jim in Wellington has questions about the Tea Party. Jim, welcome to Wake Up with Randy Corporon on 560 KLZ.
Morning. I think you guys will have a good show.
Thank you very much.
Can you two things real quick? I wanted to ask you regarding Tea Party and things like that. 2 times. One was a few months ago, Mike Lee and Ted Cruz had a website set up, and I don't exactly remember why. It's to stop the debt or something like that. You could go and sign a petition, okay?
Yeah.
And then you could donate if you would like. And if you clicked on donate, of course, they want you to do a credit card or debit card or something like that. But in that form that you had to fill out, they wanted you, and it was required in that spot, to put down your employer. And then Friday, I was checking on the National Tea Party website. If you wanted to donate to that, it had the same thing where you had to put your employer down. Why is that?
That's election law, Mark. You can probably address that better than I can. I know TeaPartyPatriots.org, the national Tea Party group that I support, that's a requirement anytime you make a donation, isn't it?
Right. It's in election laws. Both federal and state laws have requirements for if you contribute to a certain type of organization, they do require you to put in not just your name, but your employer as well. It's written in the election laws, which is why they ask you for it.
Jim, thanks for tuning into the show. Awfully glad that you called in, and I hope you'll do so often. You're listening to KLZ 560. It's Wake Up with Randy Corporon, the new morning show, live and local. Gotta love the commitment that KLZ is making to live and local radio. I'm looking through some of the Facebook comments. Krista says, I hear you all talking about caucus training. Hi, Mark Zarlengo. John says, what a pleasant surprise to turn on KLZ, hear the voice of me on the radio. Good to hear you this morning, Randy. Good luck with your show. Thanks, John. Joe says, you've started striking a blow for freedom one morning at a time. Sounds good, and it will no doubt get better. That is exactly what we are about here. We're not going to be here just to blow smoke, to make you mad, or talk about how awful everything is with no solutions. We're going to bring you the facts to the best of our ability and try and motivate and inspire you to action, because that's how we save a state. That's how we save a country. We've got one segment left in the show. We've got Mark Zarlengo in studio. We'll talk more about the risks and possible positives of these independent expenditure committees. Don't let your eyes roll up in the back of your head. This is the chairman of the Republican Party having access to potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to use pretty much any way they decide to use it. We'll talk about that more on the other side. It's Wake Up with Randy Corporon, 5 to 7 a.m. here on KLZ 560.
Wake up.
We're back. Last segment, Wake Up with Randy Corporon on KLZ 560. It's unbelievable how fast this first show has gone. We've got one segment left. Naturally, the lines are jammed up in the last segment of the show. If we don't get to your call today, please call back in tomorrow. We'll be back on the air 5 to 7 for Wake Up, which means, let's get moving out there. Ken Clark is on the line, the co-host of Grassroots Radio Colorado, one of my good friends and unbelievable activist. Ken, what the world are you doing up so early?
I thought that when you started doing the morning show, we were going to call it, "Oh my God, it's early" with Randy Corporon.
I love it. But, it's not that early for you or for me. You and I have been talking in the wee hours before the light of dawn for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we have most of our conversations at 5 o'clock in the morning, so it works out pretty well.
And we sound so smart then.
Well, I don't know about that. Maybe we're just not awake enough yet to realize the difference.
So Ken Clark's co-host of Grassroots Radio Colorado with Jason Worley, kind of the grassroots, the show that kicked it off. And I don't know about you, Ken. I was listening to to that segment before I came back on talking about Mr. Crawford and encouraging listeners of KLZ to think, to meditate and pray. It's one of the reasons I am so honored and feel so privileged to be a part of Crawford Broadcasting and doing this show here on KLZ. You just don't hear that anywhere else.
Well, and it's interesting. Mr. Crawford is a true believer. He believes in what we're doing, Randy. He believes in Grassroots Radio. I know he's going to be a big believer in your show. And it's because he cares. He cares about the future and the direction of the United States of America, and he knows that talk radio is one place you can go to find out the truth. We're not clouded with political rhetoric. We simply talk about the truth behind what's going on out there. And he understands that. Politicians they lie, like he said. I mean, they lie. It doesn't matter whether they're Republicans or Democrats. They have an agenda, and the agenda is not what's best for we the people. The agenda is what is going to further their political aspirations, and that's a problem. And so, guys, shows like yours, shows like mine, we're going to get the truth out.
Yeah, and it's just another way to grow the movement, and it's I'm so proud to be a part of it. Mark Zarlingo is in studio, and he wrote this great paper on this independent expenditure committee that Ryan Call is petitioning to set up. And I know you've got some real concerns about that.
Randy, Mark, both of you have heard me say this before. This is probably the most dangerous situation I've ever seen. The Republican Party, as it stands now, itself cannot get involved in primaries. They pretty much sit it out, let the campaigns go at it, and whoever wins, their job is to get Republicans elected. Now with this independent expenditure committee, they can get involved in primary elections outside of the party, but it'll still be controlled by the party itself. Now, if that's not enough to scare everyone who's listening half to death, then I don't know what is.
And Mark, you've put an action item out there. You're asking people to show up tomorrow and comment at this thing. Tell everybody again when and where this is going on.
Sure. There's a hearing on the petition for the Independent Expenditure Committee tomorrow, Tuesday, on January 7th at 1:30 p.m. It will be at the Office of the Secretary of State, 1700 Broadway, second floor. I encourage people to attend.
Anything on tap for Grassroots Radio that people should know about?
Well, yeah, we've got the inaugurations happen on Wednesday. The session officially kicks off on Thursday. I will be heavily involved in monitoring what's going on down at the Capitol. I'll be there almost every day during this session, and I'll be bringing people the behind the curtain, if you will, information on what's going on. We'll be talking about what bills are coming up, when the hearings are, and we'll be able to let people know when they can come down and testify either for good legislation or against bad legislation. The Democrats still control the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. So we're going to see a lot of legislation that is going to be bad. Will it be bad as 2013? I don't know, but we're going to have a workman's comp reform bill coming down the pike. That's not going to be good for business. It's not. Anytime Democrats try to reform something, small business are the ones that pay for it. So we're going to have a lot of those things. We're going to be working very closely with Rich Bratton's group, Principles of Liberty, and we will evaluate and bring the good, the bad, and the ugly on what's happening in the Colorado legislature in 2014.
Ken, I got to say, it is awfully weird to be sitting here in studio without you, but talking to you on the phone. It doesn't quite feel. I'm sitting in your chair, by the way. I like your chair better because it gives me a straight shot at Zach, and he can tell me, you're back, get your mic on, But I really like it if you could maybe call in every morning at 6:45 when you're available, you or Jason or your producer Susan, just to give everybody a heads up what they can look forward to on Grassroots Radio each evening. And maybe I can do the same tonight. We'll just preview each other's shows. I feel like we're kind of the bookends for liberty now here at KLZ.
That's absolutely right, Randy, and we will make that happen. We will make sure that does in fact happen. But you're absolutely right. I mean, Grassroots Radio was started because of activism. You were started because of activism, and that's what we do. I mean, we're just people off the street. We're people that care about what we're doing, and we got involved because we felt we had to in order to save our republic, and that's where all this comes from. And we are heavily involved. We know what's going on, and we dig deep to find out the truth.
Ken Clark, Grassroots Radio, Colorado, thanks for calling. We'll hear from you tomorrow and every day about the show. Tune in tonight, 5 to 7 on Grassroots. Steve and Matt, we're at the end of the show. I don't think we're going to have time to get to your calls. Please call in tomorrow and we'll talk about it. Steve, I know you want to promote the South Jefferson County Tea Party event, the first meeting that's going to happen Thursday. We'll talk about that a lot, and I'll call you after the show to share some ideas with you on that. Matt, call in tomorrow morning so we can actually spend some time and get your comment on this independent expenditure committee that Ryan Call is trying to set up. Mark Zarlingo, it's been great to have you here on the premiere edition of Wake Up with Randy Corporon on KLZ 560. And thanks so much. You've got to come back again because there's so much we can talk about.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored, and I just hope I'm doing a service to educate people on how to get involved.
Finishing up the comments on Facebook, Jeffrey said, wow, I'm torn on re-registering Republican, but you have a great point. And Curtis said, I just verified that I'm registered and active. Vanessa said, early bird catches the worm. What a breakfast, waking up with Randy Corporon. Thank you, everybody, for so many calls today, the great comments, the emails, etc. I will be back tomorrow on Wake Up with Randy Corporon here on KLZ 560. Be here at 5 o'clock.
You've been listening to the podcast of Wake Up with Randy Corporon. You can access these podcasts anytime at soundcloud.com/Randy Corporon or at our Facebook page at facebook.com/WakeUpKLZ. Please show your support by giving us a like and a follow and leave any comments and or feedback you may have. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, please send us your name, a short bio, and the best way we can get back to you.